Welcome to Mach 10 Sports in this November 6th, 2023 episode. Sorry, we've had some technical difficulties for this episode, just different stuff coming up for whatever reason. I'm trying to get it all figured out. Hopefully this one will keep us for the whole longevity of this episode. But week 10 did deliver. It totally delivered. We have two leaders in the clubhouse in both respective divisions of the SEC West and the SEC East. Alabama, Georgia, both getting massive divisional wins this past week. With Alabama, you got Alabama beating LSU, you got Georgia beating Missouri. The crucial driver's seat games right there. We'll review those two matchups for sure, along with the total 6 matchups in general, plus Tennessee's out-of-conference matchup against UConn. And we will also review the matchup of South Carolina and Jacksonville State in the battle of the Gamecocks. Also, it's opening night of college basketball. We'll discuss tonight's matchups and tomorrow's matchups. Remember, if you missed out on our college basketball preview from last week, I encourage you to go give it a listen with Max Barr from Southeastern 14. I feel like it's one of the better hour. We went an hour and 45 minutes just chopping it up, determining ranking at 1 through 14 through conference, our newcomer of the year, coach of the year, player of the year, the real in-depth, detailed college basketball preview. Go give it a listen on everywhere you get your podcast, but also go give us a like, subscribe, give us some rate reviews on YouTube. It's free. It does not hurt, but go check out the college basketball preview as most of these matchups start tonight. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get going. But as you know, it's Monday, so you know what that means. It's also week 11 power rankings and also money-making weekend review again. Just under 500. Not good enough. 3-5. Started off hot, better in the morning. We didn't end up well. USC kind of screwed us there. So let's get around it because we're trying to get to this 7 o'clock hour of the SEC basketball matchups. We have the week 12 around the SEC. Let me share that screen with you. Week 12, the SEC announced its week 12 matchups in football, the TV calendar schedule. Here we go for you. All right, so here we go. This is usually the weekend the SEC gets killed for, just gets destroyed for their non-conference scheduling, but it is what it is, guys. I mean, it's been like this forever. But again, ULM at Ole Miss. That'll be 11 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone kick on the SEC Network. UT Chattanooga at Alabama at 11 a.m. on ESPN+. Southern Miss at Mississippi State at 11 a.m. on ESPN+. Abilene Christian at Texas A&M at 11 a.m. Central. You're kind of getting the theme here. A lot of these SEC schools like to get their non-con matchup out of the way, get a few extra hours rest for their team. Georgia, Tennessee, the big one. The SEC on CBS, 2:30. That'll be a big one in Neyland. New Mexico State at Auburn on the SEC Network, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone. Florida at Missouri, one of the 3 SEC matchups, 6:30 p.m. on ESPN. Kentucky at South Carolina, the last true conference matchup of this weekend. That'll be the 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone SEC Network kickoff. Also, FIU at Arkansas, 6:30 p.m. on the U. And then Georgia State at LSU at 7 p.m. on ESPN2. So this is the week 12 matchups here on November 18th. I'd be lying to you if I said this was a fantastic weekend, but Georgia, Tennessee is going to be fun. Also, there'll be some big matchups there for Florida at Missouri and Kentucky, South Carolina as well, but just wanted to give that to you in our Around the SEC. Before you moving on right now, wanted to talk a little bit about it before we get into the actual preview of the game. A lot of people addressing the Dallas Turner targeting. Was it targeting? We'll review it right here. Let's look at it. I'm going to start this over. Found this from AL.com, so I want to give proper credit where credit's due here. Situation here. Late in the second half, LSU's down 2 scores here. Dallas Turner hits Jaden Daniels. Really knocks him out of the game here. I think he had somewhat of a concussion. But again, people keep looking at this, wanting targeting. I think the personal foul call was proper. I don't really think that's targeting. I really don't. I think he hits him with his, right there. You freeze. I think he goes up. You can get me, and I think it was rough in the passer. You can get that. They want to take that out of the game because they're trying to protect the most important position in sports. They know the viewership goes down if there's bad quarterback play. Sorry for the choppiness of this. I don't think this is targeting, though. I don't think this is targeting. I really don't. Maybe we'll get it from a different angle. hits him right in the chest. He doesn't lower it with his crown. And doesn't throw his his body into him. I mean, what do you want him to do? His body weight's going to go in here, or his body weight's going to go in the quarterback, obviously. I think this was just a tough, physical, probably over the border. See, he didn't launch himself, in my opinion. He just went up face mask to face mask. I don't think this is targeting. I personally do not think that was targeting. Some people may think differently. Some people are just going to believe. They want to believe when it comes to that stuff. I think it should have been a personal foul call. It was. Also, what do people? I don't think it really had a massive impact on the game. If I'm being honest with you, because it was a 15-yard penalty. Yeah, he could have got ejected. But there's just a quarter left. Alabama was up 2 scores. Yeah, LSU probably gets over 30 points if Jaden Daniels stays in the game. Let's call a spade a spade. But I didn't see them any way slowing down Alabama's rushing attack. And last I checked, Jaden Daniels didn't play defense. I mean, I don't care who this was. I don't think this was targeting. I think he hit him face mask to face mask, was going for the shoulder. Yeah, was it probably a little late, roughing the passer? Yeah, I think you can do that. They gave it to him. They still gave him 15 yards. But Dallas Turner was not ejected. LSU fans aren't real happy about it. I think it kind of is what it is. I don't really think that was that bad of a call, if I'm being completely honest with you. I really don't. I think they got that right. They're like, well, they didn't review it. They review every play in Birmingham. They decided, like, I don't think we're going to eject him for that. That was just a hard-hit football play right there. It was. You can get me with a penalty. I get it. You're trying to protect the most important position in sports. I mean, look at the NFL numbers. If the quarterback plays down, if you don't have a quarterback, it's not going to work out for you. You're not going to win many football games. Let's just call it what it is. You're just not. So I get it. It's a rough in the passer. Back in the day, you probably aren't getting anything for that. It's just a hard hit. In today's time, we're used to that. I've seen worse or less called. But ejection, targeting, no. I personally, I really didn't think so. But it is college basketball opening night. Let me pull up the schedule for you. And we will get talking about it right here, sharing it for you. All right, well, Oregon actually took the L here Georgia took the L here, 82-71, pulling up some of the betting lines just so you can get a figure on some of tonight's game. They were giving Georgia 5 going into this one. So this was the Hall of Fame tip-off, I believe, in Las Vegas. Watched some of it. It was during the day, 82-71 Oregon. Georgia just couldn't really get many shots going. It looked like Mike White was tinkering with his lineup. They played a lot of guys. I don't really think a lot of guys got into a real rhythm offensively. So we'll see how that goes from that standpoint. But Oregon opens up with an 82-71 win over the Georgia Bulldogs. Continuing with that right there for you. I mean, the opening line was +5. Tonight we also got Tennessee Tech. It's one going on right now. Yeah, Tennessee's up 41-12. Tennessee was favored by 26.5 going into this one. South Carolina only giving up 12.5 against USC Upstate. South Carolina Upstate. Remember, Gainey, USC Upstate's best player, transferred to Tennessee. Kentucky favored by 18.5 against New Mexico State. It'll be interesting to see those true freshmen. New Mexico State, especially with all the turmoil at the end of their season last year. Arkansas -24.5 against Alcorn State. Alcorn State, I think, may represent the SWAC in the NCAA tournament. Still not a very good team. Texas A&M -21.5 against Texas A&M Commerce. Alabama -22 against Morehead State. Morehead State lost their best player. Forget his name off the top of my head, but he was the preseason OVC Player of the Year at guard. Probably been a little bit more interesting game. Morehead State's favored to win the OVC, but Alabama favored by 22 tonight. Missouri -23 against Arkansas Pine Bluff. LSU favored by 24.5 over Mississippi Valley State. Mississippi Valley State's terrible. LSU should handle this, or we got big questions. Florida -19 versus Loyola Maryland. And then Ole Miss -22.5 in Chris Beard's opener versus Alabama State. Also, we got games on Tuesday and Wednesday. Tomorrow night, we got Auburn Baylor. That's the big one. 8 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on ESPN in South Dakota. Got Presbyterian at Vanderbilt at 7 o'clock tomorrow. And then I believe on Wednesday we got the last SEC game, Arizona State at Mississippi State. I think this is on Barstool TV, wherever the hell you get that at. Wherever you get that game at, I'm about to figure it out by Wednesday. But Arizona State at Mississippi State should be a good one. But that's setting the tone. We'll talk about the other games. There's a whole load of them on Friday, as you can see, coming up. But I think everybody's in action. We got some good ones. We'll talk about that one on Thursday's episode. Just wanted to touch base. A lot of SEC games that the SEC should win tonight. I mean, you heard a lot of double-digit favorites. Alabama, Morehead State, probably one if you really want to keep an eye on. You had the Georgia-Oregon one. That was interesting. Now, that was a pretty good game back and forth. Felt like Oregon controlled it. But nonetheless, that'll be interesting. We'll talk about those matchups on Friday. We have some interesting ones. We do. I think we have Memphis, Missouri. We have some pretty solid out-of-conference matchups coming up in the SEC on Friday. But again, it all starts tonight, about 20 minutes. But just wanted to talk about that before we get in it. Because remember, this is Mach 10 Sports. We cover football, basketball, and baseball in the SEC, the big three. Again, I used to work in college athletics. If you're new to the show, for about 10 years, personnel director and recruiting throughout the SEC. I feel like I have pretty good insight to bring in. But again, it's basketball season. It's my favorite time of year. We're really getting real close. Feast week, rivalry week in football. But we got some good basketball games and football games before that. But let's get into the Week 10 review that was in the SEC. Starting off, Alabama getting the 42-28 win over LSU. Jalen Milroe thought it was one of his more efficient games of the year. 15 for 23, 219 yards. Didn't have any passing touchdowns, had 0 interceptions, but rushed for 155 yards and 4 scores as well. Thought he looked real comfortable. Pulling up the box score for you here. Just thought he looked real comfortable. Probably it looked like the most comfortable and healthy he had been, if he were going to be healthy. I think there were some legs to those rumors about him being hurt. I really do think there were some legs to those rumors about maybe a tweaked ankle, tweaked calf. He looked fresh, and when he took off, had an exceptional burst and acceleration. But again, the key here, I mean, look how good Alabama was on third down here. 11 for 14. That is massive. Just look very, very impressed with Jalen Milroe. And you heard it here first. We said this would be his most efficient game of the season. Not really through the air, but he made the throws he had to. One bad throw to Isaiah Bond where looked like he couldn't make up his mind if he was going to run or pass. But Jalen Milroe, the defense, it bent but did not break. Added some new wrinkles pre-snap that I liked out of the defense. Penalties weren't terrible, not a lot of turnovers. Pretty well-played game across the board. But I think the key in this game was Alabama's 3 stops. I think the key in this game was their 3 stops in the second half that won the game. The defense, if you'll probably ask Kevin Steele, they were willing to give up, especially in the first half, yards between the 20s and try to bend but don't break and settle down in the red zone. Like I said, held LSU to 4 of 9 on third down. Not terrible, but man, Alabama's 11 for 14 was unbelievable. Caleb Downs led Alabama with 13 tackles, 9 solos, the true freshman. Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, from an LSU standpoint, they took over at times in the first half. I mean, even that play in the second half, he got his 1 foot in. I didn't think he got it in initially, but a hell of a play. Jaden Daniels was good, but wasn't his best. Missed some throws to the running backs in the flats that could have extended some drives, picked up some first downs. I thought he left behind some running backs. They were excellent for 3 quarters, though. I really thought LSU played a good game. Thought they maybe abandoned the true run game early. Thought they could have probably established 4 or 5 yards, kept Alabama a little bit more on their heels. They got away from it, wanted to pass. They thought they could pick up enough rushing yards with Jalen Daniels. I mean, they had 206, but a lot of that was not designed. But I thought they abandoned that. I really did. Defense just could never get a stop when they needed to. Front 7, just disappointing for LSU. You know who's really disappointing, in my opinion, for LSU this year? You know who's really disappointing, if we're going to talk about it from an LSU standpoint right now? Mason Smith, man. Never really was that high on him in the run game. Thought he was solid. But where was he? Where was him and Jordan Jefferson? Jaden Daniels had the same amount of tackles as Jordan Jefferson and Mason Smith. Like Mason Smith, I understand you're coming off a knee injury, but dude, it was time to step up. That was your time. I'm sure he's still recovering a little bit from that ACL tear last year, but that was Florida State in 2022 in the Superdome. I mean, it's been a while. Just been underwhelmed. Just been underwhelmed without him. Didn't think the Mekhi Wingo stuff was talked about enough. I thought Alabama could establish the run on this LSU front 7, and they did. Yeah. Just LSU's front 7, just, man, so if I'm an LSU fan, I'm severely disappointed in that. But what's next for both these teams, Alabama and LSU? Alabama 8-1, 6-0 in the league at Kentucky this week at 11 a.m. They win, they clinch the SEC West. If Ole Miss loses against Georgia, they clinch the SEC West. Alabama would have to lose out at Kentucky and at Auburn in conference play, and Ole Miss would have to win out. That's what would happen. Alabama in a good spot here. LSU 6-3, 4-2 with Florida coming up. Jaden Daniels is in concussion protocol. I don't know, but for the most part of this game, this is kind of how I thought this game would go. I thought it was well played across the board. Alabama pulled away at the start of the fourth quarter. Obviously, Jaden Daniels go out was essentially pulling the lifeblood out of that program for that night. I mean, you took him off life support. Like Garrett Nussmeier, he can make some plays, but not. It's tough to go into that situation cold, down 2 scores in the fourth quarter and expect to come back, especially if you just saw your quarterback just get destroyed and knocked out of the game. Again, I didn't think it was targeting. Personal foul, sure, call him on that. And Dallas Turner's getting this rap for being a bad player. He's just a physical end. Most of those guys are violent dudes. What do you think? They're just not going to go play violent and try to knock a quarterback out of the game? That's the name of the game. But I thought overall Alabama played its most efficient night of football. I even thought the defense played well outside of a couple of drives in the first half. Those 3 stops in the second half, a punt, interception, and then another punt, won the football game for Alabama. Give Kevin Steele and that defense credit. Thought they played their most complete game of the night. Still got 3 more wins to go. But if they get that one opportunity, that one chance in Atlanta to go try to punch their playoff ticket against Georgia, looking like the SEC is only going to get one in, they may need some help too because there's some undefeated teams. I saw some said first time since the college football playoffs have started, the top 5 teams of the CFP right now are undefeated. So SEC may need some help, but Alabama just trying to get to Atlanta to face Georgia for that one opportunity to go punch itself a playoff spot. But Alabama getting a massive win against the LSU Tigers to take the lead in the SEC West. Alabama 42-28. Next, Ole Miss over Texas A&M 38-35. Ole Miss, great start. Ole Miss could have put them – I thought Ole Miss could have put them away earlier. Let me pull up the box score, get you a little visual here. I thought Ole Miss could have put the game away earlier. If they make that field goal, make it 17-0, or they just score a touchdown, I think that game may be – I don't know if Texas A&M comes back to that. But nonetheless, the blocked field goal ran back for a touchdown. That was the difference. I think that was the difference in this game. The offense went into a lull a little bit for Ole Miss, speaking to Ole Miss specifically. 4 different 3-and-outs. A&M's defense kept it. I was impressed with both offensive lines, though. Both played well, better than I expected, both Ole Miss and Texas A&M. But the Trey Harris, Jackson Dart connection was on point. Looking at it now, Jackson Dart, 24 for 33, 210 yards. 24 for 33, 387 yards, 2 touchdowns. Harris, 11 receptions, 213 yards, and a touchdown. They were just on point. Again, they go into these lulls, though, that I don't know if they can work their way out of this week if they go to it in Athens. But I see some things, we'll talk about Georgia, that Ole Miss can take advantage of in the run game. Defensively for Ole Miss, gave up some chunk plays. I mean, you're looking at it here. A&M got 305 yards, 457 total. I mean, both these teams put yards up on one another. Ole Miss just giving up big chunk plays I think would be an issue. But it opened up the game late and got a stop at the end to win. So it's about as much as you could ask for. It's not a great unit, but it's improved under Pete Golden. From a Texas A&M standpoint, they had chances. The blocked field goal for a touchdown put them right back in it. Fought hard, but came up short again. The interception in the end zone to start the half, that's what did them in. That's what did them in my opinion. That's what did them in this game was the Max Johnson interception. He was trying to go back shoulder. It looked like the Nia Smith just didn't work. Those things can't happen. It's always something. I saw Nia Smith only with 7 touches. That's unbelievable. That can't happen. That can't happen. If you're the Texas A&M offense, Jimbo Fisher, Bobby Petrino, whoever you want to blame. He has to get touches in the jet sweeps, screens, anything. He needs to be getting 12-plus touches a game. A game. That's ridiculous. That didn't happen. If I'm an A&M fan, I want a question for that. Max Johnson apparently is going to be out with some bruised ribs. Hearing Texas A&M may be having to start this week the old Fresno State transfer. That is Jalen Henderson, the redshirt sophomore, the Fresno State transfer from Chaminade in Encino, California. Here's a little rough, but it's to be expected. You're on your 3rd quarterback. This would be A&M's 3rd quarterback. I mean, not many teams are going to hold up with their 3rd quarterback. Ole Miss would have Walker Howard. They may be in the best shape if anybody had to go to the 3rd quarterback. But most teams, 99% of the teams in the country would struggle at that point with their quarterback like that. Again, A&M just so close, but yet so far. Had opportunities. Thought the defense would play a little bit better, but once I kind of got word on Friday they had some guys out in the secondary, knew it would be a big day. That's why I switched my pick on Friday to Ole Miss, if you didn't notice. I had A&M going into that until I heard that. So I knew they would pick on like Javian Thomas had to go against Trey Harris a lot. He got picked on, but explosive day for both teams throughout the day. A&M got some stops early that kept A&M in check. They got the big stop late to hold A&M, make them settle for that game time field goal. That you hate to be like this. You hate to be a negative Nancy or a glass half full guy, but you knew he was going to miss that field goal. You knew it. I mean, if you're an A&M fan, watched enough Texas A&M football, you just knew it. You just knew it. Just can't do some of the stuff they do and win on the road. It's just disappointing for your Texas A&M fan. You're so close, but yet so far. But give Ole Miss credit. It's not always pretty, but they're working. They're 8-1 with a chance. Biggest game in a long time for Ole Miss football this weekend. Have a real shot. I don't think they're going to get to Atlanta, win the SEC West, because they're going to need Alabama to lose twice, and then they'll have to win out Ole Miss themselves. But if they do that this weekend, that's a realistic possibility. Kind of already getting into what's next for both these teams. But Ole Miss, real opportunity this week to kind of stay in the CFP race. That's still possible. For Texas A&M, they go home, probably playing their third-string quarterback, the Jalen Henderson kid, against a reeling Mississippi State team. I don't think Jimbo's going to get fired this year, but if he loses this game to Mississippi State, you better watch out. This game or Abilene Christian, which I'm not saying, you better watch out. Better get the movers. I said it going back to South Carolina week. He loses to South Carolina. He loses to Mississippi State. He probably better start calling the moving company. But how do you keep this team going? It's their fourth loss. But like I said, Ole Miss 8-1, 5-1, heading to Athens this week in a massive one. A&M 5-4, 3-3, getting Mississippi State in College Station. Next, we got Georgia. Georgia getting the 30-21 win over Missouri. For Georgia, I thought it was a good team win versus a veteran team. Back to looked off a little bit, a little uncomfortable at times. Pulling up the box score for you here. I thought Missouri, just give Eli Drinkwitz and his coaching staff credit. They consistently find mismatches for whatever reason against this Georgia team. I thought this Georgia team overall, I mean, he just back looked off. I mean, it wasn't terrible. Numbers 21 for 32, 254 yards, as you can see, 2 touchdowns. But just interior pressures and stunts, I think, especially in the second half, got on his feet, made him uncomfortable. I thought the offensive line was at very average in the first half, but the offensive line actually was the opposite. Came out and played well in the second half. And I thought the defensive line for Georgia I thought both lines of scrimmages for Georgia were not on the same page in one half. I thought the Texas A&M or the Georgia offensive line struggled in the first half, came out and played better. I thought the Georgia defensive line was good in the first half, struggled in the second half. Just both wings. Peyton Woodring, the freshman kicker, keeps making big kicks. Seems like Georgia's starting to get on that track where they have consistent kickers every year. You can go back to Rodrigo Blankenship. But it wasn't a pretty win at times. You know what? You got it done against a veteran team that is giving you has some mismatch advantages from a scheme standpoint over the last 2 years. I am a little concerned how much rushing yards they give. 151, averaging 4.4 yards a carry. I mean, Cody Schrader, 22 carries, 112 yards of 1 touchdown. You can get Georgia on the outside. Outside zone, struggling. Georgia struggling. Lane Kiffin, Zach Evans, Ulysses Bentley. Ole Miss doesn't have a bunch of maulers up front, but their scheme helps them. Like I said last week before the Texas A&M game, Lane Kiffin's going to cook up some stuff that's going to give Georgia some trouble. I don't necessarily think you can still just run right at Georgia between the tackles, but I think outside, and they factor in Jackson Dart in the running game, Ole Miss can have some success. I've seen that all year for Georgia. That's a struggle. For Missouri, had chances, obviously tied 10-10 at half, but when you go into Athens against the back-to-back defending champs, against a team who hasn't lost a game since December of 2021, you need to play your best game. The ball has to bounce your way sometimes. It just is what it is. It sounds cliche, but you got to get some breaks, some calls. Missouri's offensive line, led by Armand Mimbo, sneaky good in this league. 151 yards rushing, like I mentioned. Brady Cook, I think he was pressing at times, but overall, didn't really think he played terrible. Had some rough picks. Had some rough picks at times. Didn't really like that. But there's just a very fine line of error you can go into this game. It looks like Missouri did a lot of self-scout, though. Did a good job self-scouting themselves in the bye week before this game. Took advantage, again, of Georgia's outside run, the run defense on the edges for Georgia. That some Ole Miss is going to go take advantage of. I'm telling you, be careful. Be careful. But again, I thought Missouri gutted it out. I was impressed with Missouri. Now, they got to bounce back and not let this game beat them twice. They got a big one against Tennessee this week, which leads me to what's next. Georgia, 9-0, 6-0. Big one against Ole Miss this week on CBS. The night game on ESPN. And then Missouri, 7-2, 3-2. This game's on CBS against Tennessee at home. Missouri needs this one. But both Missouri and Tennessee need this one. I'm about to pull up. What's the early college football? That's 223. DraftKings Sportsbook. Yeah, so the early. All right, so the early lines going into this week so far, just for these specific games. Got Alabama, sorry, we're jumping in here. Minus 10.5 right now at Kentucky for this week. We mentioned Alabama earlier. We'll go back. South Carolina minus 14 against Vanderbilt. We also have, looking at it right now. Speaking of that game, we got Tennessee at Columbia, Missouri, favored by 1.5. You also have Auburn getting 3. Arkansas is favored by 3 in Fayetteville this week. Then you got Ole Miss getting 11 on the road in Athens. Georgia favored by 11. Florida getting 13.5 at LSU. LSU favored by 13.5 this week. And then A&M giving up 19, favored by 19 at home against Mississippi State. So that's kind of where we're at right now in the SEC from lines this week. But Georgia 9-0, 6-0. Ole Miss, like I mentioned. Missouri 7-2, 3-2. Battle for second in the East right there for those two teams. And Tennessee's really thinking, hey, we win this week. Georgia loses to Ole Miss. We got to control our own destiny here. But that's what's next for both Georgia and Missouri. Moving on, Auburn over Vanderbilt. Auburn getting the 31-15 win. Still some offensive struggles. If you're an Auburn fan. If you're Hugh Freeze in that Auburn offense. So it leaves a little bit to be desired overall. But here it is, looking at it right now. I mean, like you said, some offensive struggles. Explosive plays were the difference in this one for Auburn. Looking at it, 3 explosive plays in the first half. But outside of that, a lot of inconsistency. It wasn't pretty. Outside of Jarquez Hunter, just not a lot to get fired up about from a difference maker standpoint on that offense. You can't ask much more from the Auburn defense. I mean, forced 8 straight punts. The defense has held 7 of their 8 FBS opponents under their scoring average this year. Auburn's defense thin, but they're getting the most out of it with Ron Roberts. They just got to figure out how to keep turning over the 4 to 5 yards on offense. I mean, Peyton Thorne had maybe one of the worst interceptions I saw for a pick 6 out of his own end zone this week. That wouldn't get the offense, though. I mean, it's a Vanderbilt offense that struggled. I mean, they didn't score a lot in the second half, Auburn. It's 14 points. Took a 17-7 lead into half. Really not a lot from Vanderbilt. Not much to get fired up about from their standpoint. But where does Clark Lee go from here?
Lighting the way for all SUVs to follow.
Really not a lot of other stuff.
This is the fully electric, highly advanced EQE SUV.
There's really not. It is what it is. Vanderbilt's just not a very good team right now. They got to figure it out on the personnel standpoint, but they also, from an administration athletics department, how do you keep your good players? How do you keep player retention at this point when they get good players? I trust Clark Lee, but what's the Vanderbilt standard or expectation in this new era of college football? But from this game alone, and Auburn's 31-15 win, where do they go from here? Auburn 5-2, 2-4, head to Fayetteville. They're a 3.5-point underdog. It's a big game for both Arkansas and Auburn. This would be Hugh Freeze's first game that he probably needs to get, that people would be real upset with if they lost this game. What's next for Vanderbilt? 2-8, 0-6. They head to Columbia, South Carolina for an SEC Eastern Division game against 2 of the worst teams in the SEC East. Can Vandy get this one? I don't know. I don't know. Just not a lot of good. Just we're honest here at Mach 10 Sports. As if you listen to us, if you're a regular viewer, the Auburn Vanderbilt game was pretty ugly. Not a lot to take from a biggest is Auburn's defense, while thin, does do a really good job for what the Ron Roberts getting the most out of that. Auburn, outside of 3 or 4 explosive plays, is just not consistent on offense. They have to get it going this week if they want to beat us. A confident looking Razorback team in Arkansas this week. But speaking of the Razorbacks, Arkansas over Florida, 39-36. Pulling up the box score here for you. There it is, 39-36. Massive win for the Razorbacks. I called this one, by the way, not tooting my own horn, but went undefeated in my SEC picks this week. Like I said, Arkansas 39-36. over the Florida Gators in overtime. Overtime. You can tell they simplified the playbook. KJ Jefferson looked more comfortable. They brought the juice early. They're up 14-0 off an offensive score, and then a fumble ran for a touchdown. Give Kenny Guyton, the wide receivers coach, credit. 481 total yards of offense. Kind of looked like at the end, KJ Jefferson was just kind of like, screw it. I'm taking over this game myself. Simplified it for him. Hey, you go bring out energy. I'm telling you, in a close game or in a game at 11 a.m. where two teams are similar, I like the road team. I tell you that all the time at 11 a.m. For Florida, just same song and dance. Poor offensive line play at times, poor tackling, just inconsistent across the board. 112 yards rushing. It's just not going to get it done. The illegal substitution call at the end of the game almost screwed Arkansas, but if you're Florida, that can't happen. There should have been a 10-second runoff. Good thing for Arkansas, Trey Smack is usually really good. The kicker for Florida ended up missing it, going into overtime. Arkansas got the win. Now, big picture. I know people are going to want to get on Billy if he doesn't win out. They go at LSU, at Missouri, and get Florida State at home. They're going to be underdogs in all those games. He needs more time. I mean, look at the roster. It's either a bunch of older transfer kids they brought in or some young kids they're playing. Number 3 recruiting class coming in. He needs a difference maker at quarterback like DJ Lagway, the kid from Willis, Texas, should be a good player. Mertz is fine, but he's a ceiling guy. He limits them from that standpoint. People are like, well, he had an NFL starter last year, Anthony Richardson. It's the first year. Give him another year, I'm telling you. Now, you can be I think two things can be true at once. You can be critical and still think he can get another year. Now, people can be like, well, I don't think a true freshman's going to come in and save his job. I would give him 2 more years. I think next year, though, he's really going to have to go into the portal and get some help surrounded. Because if you go look at the roster, it's portal kids they brought in and young kids. It's not a lot of Dan Mullen guys. Not piling on to Dan Mullen's lack of recruiting. That's the easy, low-hanging fruit stuff. But again, some of it is on him. Like, just is what it is. Big picture, though, just specifically talking about this game. Arkansas getting the much needed 39-36 win. I mean, bowl game's not out of the realm. They get Auburn at home this week, winnable. They're favored. FIU, they'll be favored. They get a tough Missouri team at home, which they could get that at home. So some positive stuff to take away from it, Arkansas. If you're Florida, that's one you may be looking back on and being like, how? We're not going to a bowl game now because we lost to Arkansas after they fired their offensive coordinator at home. It's disappointing. You can be disappointed in Billy Napier right now, but I still think you got to give him another year where he can get another year of his guys coming in from a roster standpoint. Switching it over. Moving on. We are over Kentucky. Kentucky over Mississippi State, 24-3. Let's pull it up for you, the box score. This game, very similar to Vanderbilt and Auburn. Not pretty. Overall. I mean, 17 offensive points for Kentucky. I mean, they got 24 off the one interception. It was not pretty. As you can tell, 4 for 12, 6 for 17 for both teams on third down. Both teams not collecting a lot of first downs. The Cats very conservative in the second half. I think they knew if they just didn't turn it over, they were going to win this game. Just a weird game, kind of ugly across the board. Leary looked banged up. Either his eye or he got a concussion. Mark Stoops said he couldn't even read the play call on his band when he got out, so that's why they had to get him out of there. Defense had a get-right game after a brutal October. Held Mississippi State to 3 total yards, 218 yards rushing. Mississippi State just terrible in offense. Woody Marks did not play. We saw Chris Parsons, true freshman quarterback from NBA, come in, take over a little bit for Mike Wright. Didn't see much. I mean, limited passer. Tulu Griffin continues to not get enough touches. I don't understand that. Defense wasn't terrible. They limited Kentucky for most of the standpoint, but just a weird game in Starkville in general. I mean, it felt like once it was kind of 17-0, 24, I mean, it never ended after half. I mean, this game was pretty much over. It had 21-3. It had Mississippi State with the offensive power without Will Rogers and Woody Marks right now. They're not coming back from that. A lot of smoke around Zach Arnett. Again, I'm still going to leave it out. I mean, they're not going to win this week, most likely. And they're not going to be bowl eligible. I mean, or they need to. They could get Southern Miss, and they got Ole Miss at home. I don't see that. Will Rogers claims he's not missing the Egg Bowl, so maybe he plays in the Egg Bowl this year. Would give them, obviously, a better opportunity. A lot of it SEC experience. Zach Arnett's had success stopping Lane Kiffin before. Let's be honest. Ole Miss is the better football team. I don't see Mississippi State getting to 6. Where do they go from there? That's for another episode. We're not going to go to that. We're just talking about some Kentucky, Mississippi State preview from that standpoint. But again, Kentucky, the 24-3 win over Mississippi State in Star Bowl. Where does that leave Kentucky? Kentucky is 6-3, 3-3 with a road game, a home game against Alabama. Alabama and Kentucky don't really play. It'll be 11 a.m. on ESPN. Will be interesting to see Devin Leary's health. Mark Stoops didn't want to talk about it much today in his press conference. That'll be key. I think it's a bad matchup for Kentucky. Probably banking in Alabama's going to come in a little physical and beat it. But again, Alabama, I think, defense only played 57 snaps. So they weren't on the field a lot. Mississippi State, 4-5, 1-5, head to Texas A&M, where they're 19.5-point underdogs. Battle of really third-string quarterbacks. If Chris Parson gets the start, and the Jalen Henderson kid getting the start from Fresno State, that'll be an interesting game. But across the board there, previewed all those matchups. Alabama getting the 42-28 win over LSU we discussed. Ole Miss getting the 38-35 win over Texas A&M. Georgia getting the 30-21 win over Missouri. Auburn getting the 31-15 win over Vandy. Arkansas getting the 39-36 overtime win over Florida. Then Kentucky over Mississippi State 24-3. Tennessee, we talked a little bit non-conference. Got a big win against UConn on Saturday. Wasn't overly impressive. It was fight. It was what it was. I saw something about UConn came out and blocked their tunnel or something, or was warming up on their side of the field. What if you're UConn? What are you doing, guys? What are you doing? Why would you poke the bear? You're 1-8. But yeah, Tennessee getting the 59-3 win over UConn, covered easily. Defense needs to continue to get home a little bit. Only 2 sacks since halftime of the Alabama game. That needs to step up. What's next for Tennessee? 7-2, 3-2 in conference at Missouri. Both, it's a big game. We'll preview it on Thursday for Tennessee and Missouri. Winner's going to be sitting. Tennessee, if Georgia loses to Ole Miss this week, they'll have a chance to go win the SEC East at home against Georgia the next week. So Tennessee's still in this. Missouri, obviously, probably out of it, or they are out of it because they lose the tiebreaker to Georgia. But this is really a battle for second place in the SEC East. It'd be big for both teams. And then South Carolina getting the 38-28 win over Jacksonville State in the Battle of the Gamecocks. Jacksonville State was driving with a minute and a half left to go win the game, threw a pick six, but it's same issues as it always is for South Carolina. If this were a conference game minus Vandy, they lose this game. It'd be another loss. Jacksonville State, like I said, driving late in the fourth to win it. Jack State put up 421 yards, ran the ball, stopped the run better than South Carolina. If I'm South Carolina, I don't feel that much better. Shane Beamer's like, we're going to celebrate wins around here. It's hard to win. I get it. Celebrate it, but I wouldn't just be going toot my horn about it either. There's some stuff you just don't say. Yeah, football is hard to win. You only get 12 opportunities on Saturday. But let's just don't go to be tooting our horn. Yeah, we won. We celebrated Ockerbeck. Yeah, we celebrated, but we know we got stuff to improve on. But again, for South Carolina, penalties killed them. It's the same song and dance. What's next for them? South Carolina 3-6 has to win out to get to bowl eligibility. So that starts this weekend with a home game against Vanderbilt. They get Kentucky at home and get Clemson at home. 3 straight games at Willie B. It's possible. I don't know if it's likely, though. South Carolina, a lot of things to work on, though, before we head in to the final week there. But let's get into it. We got a couple more things to get you out of here, to go over before we get you out of here so you can settle in for your SEC basketball night. Right now, let's pull up the power rankings. Where was I? I got my power rankings here for you. So my week 11 power rankings, if you can see, have Georgia coming in at 1. Yeah, I think that's fair. There's no movement. Solid win against a veteran Missouri team. Alabama easily coming in at number 2 now. Played their most complete game of the season on Saturday. Jalen Milroe, as we mentioned in that review of the LSU game, his passing numbers aren't going to wow you, but he looked the most comfortable he's been in that offense. Defense, 3 safe stops in the second half, won that game. Give him credit. Bama comes in at 2. Ole Miss had him sitting at 4, made him jump over. People have been asking why I hadn't had him Ole Miss over LSU before because Ole Miss won the head-to-head. This is all based on like how I feel in a neutral site game that would be favored. I'm going to give Ole Miss the edge now. They keep winning these tough, gritty games where their defense gets stops when they need to and their offense makes plays when they need to. Big trip, one of the bigger games for Ole Miss in a long time, heading to Athens this week. They come in at number 3. LSU, what's the situation with Jaden Daniels? I thought they played a pretty good game overall. Defense. I saw Brian Kelly came out today and said the only thing I regret us not doing was spying Jalen Milroe more. I could have told you that, BK, going into it. But again, LSU disappointing, but they dropped to 4. Defense got to get figured out. Missouri, veteran squad, love the offensive line, gritty team. They did a good self-evaluation in themselves through their bye week before the Georgia game. Getting that outside zone scheme standpoint, I think you can stretch Georgia thin this year on. I think you're going to see more teams. I think Lane Kiffin be watching that in the run game for the Rebs this week. I like Missouri, though. Veteran team. Brady Cook pressed a little bit towards the end, but I like what they're doing. Number 6, Tennessee. Like the win against Kentucky, did what they had to do against UConn. Big opportunity against the team we just talked about for really the flagship of the second place in the SEC East. But again, Georgia loses at home to Ole Miss this week. They're fighting for the East lives in Neyland next week with the whole SEC East on the line. But I like Tennessee. Look like they're improving. Love the run game. Think they have the best running back core in the league. Number 7, Texas A&M. Just keep going back to it. They're just cannot win a close game. But, I mean, who you putting in front of them? So I got them at 7. 8, Kentucky. Passing game looks improved. Devin Leary, what's his status against Alabama this week? I just don't like the matchup against Alabama, but I like Kentucky at 8. Florida at 9. People are going to give them over Arkansas when they just played head-to-head. And they lost in overtime. Still, like, Florida still has the best win out of the 2 teams against Tennessee at home. I think overall Florida's probably the better team, more complete team, even though Arkansas lost, which brings me into Arkansas. Hey, I called that. This just smelled like a Sam Pittman win on Saturday. Like sneaking in, let loose, have nothing to lose. 11 a.m. game. Florida's coming off a big loss to their big rival. Just snuck up on them. Started off hot, 14-0. The Razorbacks. Offensive score, defensive score. Gutted it out. Got to stop when they needed to. Big late field goal. Honestly, got screwed. Should have been a 10-second runoff against Florida. Give them credit, man. That was a fun game to watch. Big win for Arkansas, but they're still coming in at 10th. Their opponents next. It's be a big win for both teams, Arkansas or Auburn, but Auburn coming in at 11th. I like the defense. Again, holding 7 out of their 8 FBS opponents under their season average. Gotta like the defense, but it's thin. Offense, gotta start getting some more explosive plays, guys. Coming in at 12, South Carolina is what it is. Not a good football team right now. These bottom 3 teams. Mississippi State on their 3rd-string quarterback. It's looking like Chris Parsons could get the start in College Station. I don't know if they go that route, though, because it's a tough first true road start at home at night or in College Station at night. Probably see Mike Wright and him as well. Will Rogers reportedly coming back for the Mississippi tour, coming back for the Southern Miss and Ole Miss game. And then Vanderbilt, where do they go from here? They're coming in at 14th. But these are the Week 11 SEC power rankings. And then finally, before we get you out of here, I have my Week 10 SEC betting review. We went 3-5. We're 43% on the season now. Let me go to mine. Oh, I got to go back to my bets to show you this from this past weekend when I posted it. Let me go to it. Here it is. All right, so Jack State, one of our 3 wins. We had 3-5 plus 15.5. Covered this with ease. The pick 6 late was scaring me. They couldn't have back-to-back pick 6s. But Rich Rodriguez and his squad could have won the game. Covered easily. Nebraska -3. Lost to Michigan State straight up. What the heck, guys? What the heck? Tough loss there. Missouri plus 15.5. Proud of this. I thought they covered this one with ease. Closer game. Lost by 9. USC +3. Trusted the offense. Caleb Williams did too. Went crying to his mom in the stands. Defense just can't do anything. Don't know why I trusted them. SMU struggled against in-state rivalry Rice. They got the win. Did not cover the 12. Louisville covered with ease at home against Virginia Tech. -9.5. I like that one. Those are my 3 wins and lost both unders here. Ole Miss, Texas A&M. I put this one in before I found out that A&M was without 2 starters at corners. I'd have taken the over at that point. Don't fault myself there too much, but I took the under 40-54 in the Ole Miss A&M game. Then Texas K-State. I still don't hate that. I mean, Texas's offense can struggle at times without Quinn Ewers in. And then Kansas State traditionally just doesn't put a bunch of points under 49, but they did not clear that. But we went 3-5, 43%. I don't know what to tell you, people. I apologize for this 4-week stretch of just embarrassing bets. We're going to get better. I promise you we will be better when it's all said and done. Just stay with us here. Again, we got 4 more weeks. It's winning. We're getting back on track this week. We're getting back. This 3-5 this past week is not working for us here. We will be back. But that will do it on this episode of Mach 10 Sports. Kind of got you in and out because we got some SEC basketball opening night go sift through, man. It should be a fun night. But again, we covered all 6 conference matchups, even touched on Tennessee and South Carolina's out-of-conference matchups. Alabama in the driver's seat. Real easy path. It's looking like not easy, clear path to Atlanta to represent the West. Georgia, after they're winning against Missouri, real clear path to represent the SEC East. So we're standing right now in football. Basketball, it's here starting tonight. Got a lot to cover. We unveiled my Week 11 SEC Power Rankings. Felt really good about that one this week. Again, rough week on the betting standpoint, 3 for 5 or 43% on the season. But again, we got 4 weeks left, baby. 3 weeks left regular season, championship weekend. We usually go 8 a week. We're going to go 32-0 over the next 4. 32-0. But again, I appreciate you joining us on this episode of Mach 10 Sports. We'll have our previews, this weekend's previews, Week 11 previews, along with some basketball matchups across the league. There'll be a ton of SEC matchups on Friday night. Got a fun episode coming up for you this upcoming Thursday. But with that being said, I appreciate you joining us on this episode of Mach 10 Sports. You have a great rest of your middle of the week.